Well, hello there. Today in this video, I'm going to tell you about 6 awesome places in the area surrounding St. George, Utah that you may not have heard of. These are places that definitely will not disappoint. St. George, Utah is located in the heart of southwestern United States, near the Arizona border. The town of St. George is surrounded by the mountains on the west and the north sides. The first awesome place in the area surrounding St. George, Utah that you may not have heard of is Yant Flats and the Candy Cliffs. Yant Flats is about 20 miles and about 40 minutes drive north of St. George. Yant Flats. Another location not widely known is Yant Flat Cliffs, or the Candy Cliffs, a stretch of red and orange rocks right at the upper edge of the sandstone layer, extending about 3 miles along the southern boundary of a rocky plateau called Yant Flat. Above here, the mountain slopes are wooded and overgrown, but the cliffs and their associated buttes and ravines are mostly unvegetated and richly colored. Common southwestern scenery, but here with the added attraction of unusual stripes and patches of color cutting across the natural thin layered cross bedding. The wavy bands occur in shades of orange, red, yellow, and pink and white, which in turn, combined with varied rock forms and textures, make for a very photographic landscape. Exploration is moderately difficult, however, and quite time-consuming, owing to the high relief. Cross-country walking requires negotiating steep slopes and deep gullies, so it can take a while to find the best locations. All the cliffs and the surrounding lands are publicly owned, and there are plenty of good camping places nearby. The stony plains of Yant Flats are also notable for being home to a herd of wild horses. The next awesome place in the area surrounding St. George, Utah that you may not have heard of is the Narrows of Zion National Park. Zion National Park is about 40 miles and about 50 minutes drive north and east of St. George. The Narrows is the narrowest section of Zion Canyon. This gorge, with walls 1,000 feet tall or more, and the river sometimes just 20 to 30 feet wide, is one of the most popular areas in Zion National Park. You can see the Narrows by hiking along the paved wheelchair-accessible Riverside Walk for 1 mile from the Temple of Sinawava. If you wish to see more, you will be walking in the Virgin River, that is, in the water. This can involve wading upstream for just a few minutes, or you can go for an all-day hike. The water is cold, and the river has lots of rocks, varying in size from the tiniest grain of sand to much larger than a basketball. You probably want to get some hiking poles and perhaps the special rubber shoes that you can rent. The Narrows extends for 16 miles, but most people only go for a few miles. It can be quite exhausting, and the cold water will draw the energy out of your body, as well as walking against the current of the water. The next awesome place in the area surrounding St. George, Utah that you may not have heard of is Snow Canyon State Park. Snow Canyon State Park is about 10 miles and about 15 minutes north of St. George. Snow Canyon State Park is a 7,400-acre scenic park quietly tucked amid lava flows and soaring sandstone cliffs in a strikingly colorful and fragile desert environment. Majestic views and the subtle interplay of light, shadow, and color dancing across canyon walls evoke strong emotional responses from customers. Transported by wind more than 183 million years ago, tiny grains of quartzite sand covered much of what we now call Utah. These sand dunes, up to 2,500 feet thick, eventually metamorphized into stone, burnt orange to creamy white in color. Navajo sandstone, the predominant rock in the park, is what remains of the ancient desert sand sea. The park offers opportunities for outdoor enthusiasts of all ages. Activities include hiking, nature studies, wildlife viewing, photography, camping, ranger talks, and more. There are more than 38 miles of hiking trails and a 3-mile paved walking and biking trail, and over 15 miles of equestrian trails. The next awesome place in the area surrounding St. George, Utah, that you may not have heard of is Babylon Arches. The distance from St. George is about 21 miles, and it takes about 33 minutes to drive. Babylon Arch leads Utah, Red Cliffs Desert Reserve. Babylon Arch Trail is a very sandy but very gratifying trail. It doesn't take long on the trail to feel like you have landed on Mars with all the cool sandstone formations around you, and the arch is very unique compared to any I have ever seen. This hike is not stroller friendly, but young children can make the trek with some help. The trail forks and will take you to the arch or to the Virgin River. It doesn't take much longer to do both, and the river is refreshing in the summer with the hot weather and fun to look at. This one is definitely worth the trip. It's moderately difficult. The round trip length is about 1.5 miles from the primitive camping area. Average hike time is about 1.5 hours, round trip. The next awesome place in the area surrounding St. George, Utah, that you may not have heard of is the Red Reef Trail. Red Reef Trail, a part of Red Cliffs National Conservation Area, is about 20 miles and about 30 minutes northeast of St. George.
But it's just stunning. It's just everywhere you look, you just can't get enough of how beautiful it is.
Yeah, right after you leave the parking lot, you have this amazing panorama in the distance of these towering wind and rain sculpted red rock. And the first half a mile, maybe, you see all these in the distance. Yeah, it's amazing how some of the areas are marked with black streaks and the red rounded, all shades of red and orange, rounded wind etching and rain etching. It's just remarkable, the sculptures that have been naturally produced.
It's just such a perfect place to take somebody for a fairly short, not very hard hike, but to see the beauty of this area in one small place.
Yeah, the trail is about 3 miles round trip, and it only gains about 300 feet over the course of that 1.5 miles each way. And there are a few hills, but it's not really anything that's terribly challenging for any ambulatory person, would you say?
No, I mean, We take our poles because there are parts where you have to climb up some pretty rocky, sandy surfaces, and then correspondingly climb down, which is my least favorite part of those same areas. So the poles are nice, but a lot of times you don't even need them. You can just carry them.
Yeah, it's a real nice walk. Now we have been there at times when the sun is pretty hot and there's not a whole lot of shade. There is some, but there's not a whole lot. So obviously you need to take water if you're going to do this hike, and plenty of water, and a liter or two. And you need to bring a good hat with you and good walking shoes. The next awesome place in the area surrounding St. George, Utah, that you may not have heard of is Gunlock Falls. Gunlock State Park is about 20 miles and about 35 minutes northwest of St. George. Gunlock Reservoir and Gunlock State Park lies just far enough away from the hustle and bustle of the metropolitan areas of St. George. With incredible views and warm water, this remote reservoir lake is a perfect spot for a day in and around the water. Bring your water toys and come play. This Utah State Park recently gained acclaim with its waterfalls, an occasional and temporary occurrence when the rain and runoff of snow melt cause overflow of the reservoir. Although it doesn't happen every year and only for a shortened period, you'll most likely see it in late winter and early spring. When you're not watching the waterfall, you can do paddle boarding and kayaking and most any other water sport such as fishing or boating. And these are the 6 amazing things to see near St. George, Utah,